Okay, for our very last lesson of MS 100, I want to talk to you about two functions. The functions are IPMT and PPMT. Okay. Now, before we jump into how IPMT and PPMT works, I thought I'd quickly show you a little refresher about the regular PMT or payment function. So let's just talk loans for a second. Okay. So let's say you go out and you take out a small business loan of $300,000. All right. Well, if you finance that $300,000 over a 10-year span at 6.5%, you're going to make some type of repayment concept or monthly payment to repay that debt at that 6.5% interest rate. So before we jump in to the IPMT, which is interest payment, and PPMT, which is principal payment functions, let's just quickly figure out what the regular monthly payment of a $300,000 loan at 10 years and 6.5% interest would be. Okay. So we're going to open up by typing equals PMT. We're going to grab our given annual percentage rate, which is 6.5%. Divide that by 12 to create a periodic interest rate that reflects monthly payments. All right. We're going to jump into the next argument, which is NPER, total number of periods, which it's 120 periods, but why do the math, right? We can just click 10 times 12, giving us 120. And the last thing we're going to need to do is plug in our present value, which is $300,000. Okay. And that's going to tell us that our monthly payment on this small business loan is $3,406.44. So we're going to take this number and we want to talk about this number for a little bit. Okay. So it's important to understand that throughout the lifetime repayment of a loan, that even though the monthly payment never changes, the amount of interest and the amount of principal per payment that you pay does change. So let's start with the basic concept, right? What is interest? Well, interest is different depending on who you are. If you were the bank, you could look at interest as return on investment. It's the amount that you're making per period for letting someone borrow money from you. If you're a consumer, it's the amount that you are paying in addition to the original amount that you borrowed to the person that has given you that loan. So it really depends on who you are. But basically, think of interest like a return of some sort. Okay. What is principal? Principal is the actual dollar amount that you have borrowed, your principal balance. That is what you must repay to fulfill your loan agreement. And there's almost always some additional kind of interest on top of that. So now the reason that I bring that up is that the principal and interest combined is what make up the payment amount. So when you use the PMT function, it's actually taking the interest and the principal for a specific payment and combining it to tell you that this is how much you pay in order to fulfill that 6.5% interest rate and repay all of your debt within the term, which is 10 years of the loan. So what I want to do is show you how to isolate how much of this payment is interest and how much of this payment is principal. But in order to do that, you have to understand that the amount of interest and the amount of principal change over time. Okay? So for now, let's just calculate how much the amount of interest for the very first payment of your $300,000 loan would be. Now, if you're taking business calculus, you've probably learned how to calculate interest on your own without using any kind of functions in Excel. And in order to do that, it's not a problem, right? It's the periodic interest rate multiplied by the amount that you owe. So what is that exactly? The rate per period multiplied by the amount that you owe. And that'll tell you what the interest is for a specific payment. Well, the rate per period is simply this divided by 12, which reflects the fact that this is now monthly. So this is the monthly interest rate or the periodic interest rate. So if I take this multiplied by the amount that I owe, it'll tell me how much interest I will be paying for the first payment. Okay, first payment interest. Okay. So all I need to do is take 300,000 multiplied by the rate per period, and it's going to tell me that my interest for the first payment is $1,625. Now, you've probably heard the old adage that the bank takes their cut off the top, which is absolutely true. So when you make this check, when you write the check for 3,406 each month, first thing the bank's going to do is subtract their interest, okay? So if on the first time you make a payment, you write a check for this 3,406.44, the bank is going to go in and they're going to say, all right, well, we'll take this 3,406 and we're going to immediately take our interest or our return right off the top, okay? Leaving us with 1,781.44. The remaining balance after you subtract the interest from the total payment is the principal. This amount, 1,781.44, goes to reducing the total amount of $300,000 that you owe. Easy enough. But here's the catch. The catch is, as I told you earlier, that interest is calculated by taking the periodic interest rate, which is this, multiplied by the amount that you owe. The catch with this is, after the first payment, you no longer owe $300,000. You owe $300,000 minus 1,781.44. So the amount that you're paying in interest will go down. Now, as that amount of interest goes down, the amount of principal that you pay goes up. So you still end up paying 3,406 per month, but the amount of that balance between interest and principal changes. Now, that is a handful. And if you don't really like business calculus or you're not really big into math, maybe you don't want to do the mathematic method to calculate interest and principal. The good news is with Excel, you don't have to. We have two functions available to calculate interest and principal. Those functions are AIPMT and Ppmt, like so. Okay. So let me show you how the AIPMT function works first. And then you'll see once you learn how that works, Ppmt works almost exactly the same. It just tells you a different number. So let's just dive right in. Let's go for AIPMT. Okay. So the opening syntax for AIPMT is just that, AIPMT. And I will open up insert function so you can see the arguments, and then I'll go back and solve this for you and let you see how this is pretty easy to do. So the first argument for the AIPMT function is rate. Just like almost every other financial function in Excel. Almost every function you see, you'll see rate first if it's a financial function. Now, when you see the word rate, it's important to understand that that is the rate per period or the periodic interest rate, not necessarily the given rate. Okay? So you need to make sure that you pay attention to that and adjust accordingly. Okay? The second argument of the AIPMT function is PER, which stands for period. That is the specific period that you want to find the interest for. Now, just like we just discussed, every time you make a payment, that's called a period. And every time you make a payment, the amount of interest that you pay goes down because the amount that you owe is also going down. So this number will change if it's a 10-year or a 10-year loan between the numbers 1 and 120, depending on which number, which loan installment you're looking to calculate the interest for. Okay. The third argument is just like the payment function, right? NPER stands for total number of periods for your entire length of loan. Okay. PV stands for present value. Okay. So that's the amount that you're borrowing. And the future value, you probably won't use this much, but this would be if you had a loan that at the end of the loan, there was still a balance, meaning that you don't actually own whatever that is at the end. There's some kind of remainder left over. That being said, in this case, we're not going to use that. So we can leave this out as future value is an optional argument of the AIPMT function. Okay. So let's go ahead and write this function and just see what happens. So we'll just dive in. We'll open up with AIPMT. The first thing it's going to do is ask us for our rate. The rate, as I explained, is the rate per period, the periodic interest rate. Now, we've already calculated that here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click it. But note that if you didn't already have it calculated, you could take 6.5%, divide by 12 in this case, and you'd get that same answer. Okay? So the second argument is PER. Now we just talked about that. That's the number, the period number that you want to evaluate. Now there are 120 total payments for this specific loan. So in this case, it could be anything between 1 and 120. However, we want to evaluate the first payment. So I'm going to click 1 here. Okay. The third argument is NPER, stands for total number of periods. Now you know from when we did the payment function up top that that is 120. However, instead of us going through and doing the math to figure out 120, how about we just let Excel do it for us, and we'll do 10 times 12. And the very last thing we're going to do is plug in the present value. That's the amount of the loan that we're actually taking out. That's going to be $300,000, okay? Now, we talked about the future value, and we don't have a remainder in this particular case. We've also talked about type in prior exercises. So in every single financial function, you will see, or almost every financial function, you'll see a type, which will be either 0 or 1. Okay. Now, this isn't just something in Excel. This is just a business calculus thing. If you have a financial calculator, you'll have the same option. You'll have end or beginning as a 0 or 1 to calculate how the interest is compounded or how the payments are made. Okay. So in this particular case, we didn't say. So if it doesn't say, the default is 0. Okay. We close it off, and lo and behold, how about that? We get 1,625. When we did this manually, we got 1,625. So you're probably asking, well, what's the benefit of the IPMT function over the PMT function, or over manually calculating it? Well, the advantage is if I want to quickly evaluate, say, the 80th payment, all I have to do is change the period from 1 to 80. And it's going to tell me that on the 80th payment, my interest is $676.76. If I wanted to do that this way, it would require some significant math. Okay. So we'd have to do 80 different calculations in order to get down to this. It'd be pretty complicated. Okay. So in this case, if I want to go to, say, the 120th payment, all I have to do is change 80 to 120. And now it's telling me that I have $18.35 in interest that I'm paying on the 120th payment. Now, if the concept of interest going down is confusing to you, check out the next video on amortization, all right? And you'll be able to see that in action. But before you do that, how about we talk about Ppmt for just a moment? So I'm going to go ahead and change this back to 1. And let's talk about the Ppmt function, all right? Ppmt stands for principal payment, all right? The Ppmt function is going to tell you how much the principal is for any given specific payment within a range of payments, okay? So just like you could isolate the interest for the first payment of a loan, you could isolate the principal for the first payment of the loan using the Ppmt function, okay? So just like IPMT, the arguments are actually 100% the same. So the first argument is rate, standing for your periodic interest rate. The second argument is period. It's the period within your repayments that you were evaluating. And in this case, it's something between 1 and 120. However, it could be anything depending on the length of your loan. Okay. The third argument is NPER, which stands for total number of periods. The fourth argument is present value. That's the amount of your loan. And the fifth and final optional argument here, so you notice that it's not bold, that's optional, is if there would be some kind of remainder at the end, which there isn't in this particular case. All right, so let's jump into this one and let's figure out the principal of the first payment of our loan. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to do Ppmt, like so. Okay, I'm going to take my periodic interest rate. I'm going to take my specific, I don't need to divide it by 12 because I already did that up top. Okay. I'm going to take my first period, so that's the first payment that we're evaluating. I'm going to plug in 10 times 12 for my NPER, which is the total years of my loan, multiplied by 12 because I'm making 12 payments per year. And the last thing I'm going to do is plug in my present value of 300,000, and I'm going to get, hey, look at that, 1,781.44. If I were to add these two up, what's it going to tell me? $3,406.44. Okay. So let's take this even a little bit farther before we get out of here. So let me just highlight this so you can see it. Take this a little bit farther before we go. What if I wanted to evaluate, say, I don't know, the 30th payment? Well, to evaluate the 30th payment out of the 120 payments, well, I'm just going to jump right in here and I'm going to change that one. Whoops. I'm going to change that 1 to 30. There we go. And it's going to tell me that that principal payment's pretty high. I'm going to change the 1 within IPMT also to 30. And it's going to tell me that now the principal is $2,083.57 and the interest is $1,322.87. The important thing to find out or to pay attention to is that they still add up to the original monthly payment. Okay, now that's a really key learning point that you'll see in the next video. So take a moment, try this on your own. This file is available to download. Practice, 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 and when you're ready, go ahead and skip over and take a look at the amortization video next. All right, so that's what's coming up next. Until then, if you have any other questions, please come by, give me a shout out, shoot me an email, give me a call, and I'll see you soon.